Hey everybody, it's Adrian Declare here from Blocworx. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to build a block that can get live currency feeds every day or whatever amount of time schedule we want. And then we can utilize that information in Blockworks to do whatever else we need, whether it's creating invoices or anything like that. So it's going to be using a field that we have called the Blocworx Gateway Field, which is part of our new version 3.0 Blockworks, which is basically a field that is designed to call APIs. Um, it's primarily designed to call maybe a custom API that you might have been written yourself, but it can also call any public ones as well. Uh, so the first thing I'll do is create a new module, or let's see, yeah, we create a new block called FX rates. So to know what we're going to build in Blockworks, we kind of need to understand the API a bit. So to watch this video and to understand it, you do need to have a basic understanding of how APIs work and how to use them. I kind of highly recommend, even if you're not a software engineer, spend a day or whatever you can learning about that, because it could be very valuable to you in Blockworks, even if you're not an engineer, for getting information from other bits of software, or even working with your IT team and being able to get information from them or instruct them of what you need. So for the currency, I'm going to use API layer, and it's an API called exchange rates data API. First thing I'll quickly do is just figure out what I'm going to be sending to the API first and what it's going to return. So I can see here that this is the request. What I'll do is I'll copy the code because I can't see it fully in their preview. I'll put it in here. So I can see that in this example, you make a request to this URL, you send over the to, which is obviously what you're trying to convert to, maybe from, so we'll say euro, from euro to US dollar, and the amount is the amount, obviously. So if you send over from euro to US dollar, amount could be 2, then it will return this JSON object, which Blockworks can then read. At the moment, Blockworks can only read the top level information. We're working on improving that. So whatever API you're using would require that. So let's just say it can, if you have a field called date, it'll populate this. If you have a field called result, it'll populate with this value. So let's go and build the block. I'll just quickly show you the field first, the Blockworks Gateway field, but we're going to have to create other fields first to actually use it. So it is down here in third-party integration components. Here you put in the URL, you tell it if it's a get or post request. Once again, you're going to have to understand APIs to understand some of this. You can also decide how it's going to be triggered. Is it when you click submit in the form? Is it when you're editing the form? Is it with a button manually, or will we have it on schedule? So what we'll do is we'll do it manually with a button first, and then we'll turn on the schedule at the end. You can also have it triggered by when values change in different fields. So using rules basically. And here we add our headers. And you can also send over a custom request as well. So first thing we need to do, so the way that the field works is it sends over the data that you have in your block based on the field slugs. I'll put a link to our description to explain what a field slug is. But it's basically the unique ID for any field we create in Blockworks. So coming back to this again, and we'll go to the one I can see properly. We need 3 fields, to, from, and amount. So let's just say 2. And the field slug that's created from that is the same, but there's no spaces or anything, so it's just TO. That's why I knew what to call it. The next one is from, and the next one is amount. And then looking at the result, it returns these ones. Again, like I was saying, it only populates the top level of the JSON response. So we won't be able to get this information. Our next version will hopefully be able to handle that as well, where you can control multi-level responses from the JSON. So in this case, if we create a field called result, it will populate this value. Same with success and date. So what I'll do is I'll create one called result. I'll do date as well. Why not? I can see the format is different to the normal date, so I'll just make it a text field. I'll make it a plain data field. Finally, the main part, we're going to create the actual Blocworx Gateway field. So coming back to our API instructions, you can ignore the fact that this is just a code sample, but we're not actually coding. So what we want to do in this example is take just this part of the URL, not the parameters yet. We'll just say convert. Next thing we want to do, we don't want to send our own authentication token. We don't need that. That's the token that was used to log into Blocworx that was generated. Sometimes that's handy if you want to do other stuff with your own Blocworx login afterwards, but we won't do that in that video. It's a GET request. So we know this because it tells you here, custom request GET. We're going to say manually send it with a button. So convert now is the name of the button text. We'll make it orange. We can ignore this, conditions and frequency. And this is an important one, populate fields in the form with the response data. So if we don't click this, it'll give a response, but it won't do anything with it. Sometimes you see we don't have to do anything with it. Sometimes we want to call an API that's doing something else and we don't actually need a response, and that's what this is for. It gives you control over whether you actually want to try and do something with the return or not. We're not looking to trigger rules with the new values. We can look at that after, maybe in either at the end of this video, we'll see how we're going, or in another video. There are a few more parameters here as well, which we can explore in another video, which won't be applicable to this. And don't forget as well, we have our manual, which I can put in the description as well, which explains all these different parameters. So the next thing we need to do is put in our headers. So this is the headers it's telling you to put in. So I'm going to copy and paste. And we have our API key. So like I was saying, the Blocworx Gateway field takes your current field values and builds this itself based on the field slugs. That's if it's a GET request. If it's a POST request, it builds an array. But for now, we can just watch this working first. So I'm going to click submit if I'm happy with this field. And go to front end. And we'll test it out. I think I'll just do one more change actually. I don't like that I have the two before the from. It's a bit confusing. So it's nice to have everything in order. While I'm at it, maybe it's better to say put the result after the button. So we'll move the button up, and I'll also make the result plain data so you can't change it. Just to make things a bit neater. Okay, so let's try it out. We will convert from euro to US dollars. I will do 1. And the reason I'm doing 1 is because we might use this information later and we use a math field or something to get whatever we need to get. So we've just converted to the US dollar. As you can see, it's much stronger than the euro at the moment. And we'll also do US dollar, sorry, from euro to pound. And we'll do 1 as well. And the pound is much stronger as well. I'm going to do one small thing here. I'm just going to move these around because that's also a bit confusing. So if I go down to data display settings, and you can just move this to the top one. So that was our currency working, the currency converter working, calling an API. So after that, then it's just a matter of using this information to do whatever we need to do with that. So for instance, let's just say we have another block where let's just pretend we're about to do an invoice block. I'm not going to build a whole invoice block in this one. I'm just going to do a very basic full width. And even an invoice might be too much of an exaggeration, but we could say get the, so I'm making a new block amount, and we'll just say that pound value. Make it a plain data field. I'll make it a text field. We might need to change it for whatever reason. We just need to say it doesn't matter because it's all numeric anyway. So I'm going to do a rule here. Oh, we need to do one more thing. We need to, let's just say, currency. I'm going to do one more. We're going to make the pound and the US value. So I duplicated that field just so I could quickly do it. And we need to also do one more thing. We have to create 2 plain data fields that represent the values we're trying to convert. So this one is going to be Great British Pound, or I would say pound code, we'll call it. Great British Pound. The default value is GBP, and you'll see in a minute why we need to use this. Usually we hide all these fields once we're ready. And US dollar code. And we'll do one more, which is the Euro code, because we need all these so we can figure out how to do the search. So you'll see why we need all these in a minute. I'm going to create a rule that gets triggered on the amount. So when you change the value of the amount, it's going to look up the current rate. So let's say populate another local field with data from elsewhere. So block to look up is FX rates. Data required is the amount, or sorry, the result. Local field to populate is the pound value. So we'll do the pound first. And now we're doing this, we're choosing what we want to use as our search. So we want to say the euro code must match the from, and the pound code must match the to. So now we can just try it out. So as you can see, it got the rate here, but obviously we want to do more with that. Before I carry on, I'm just going to do the US one. So just to explain again what I'm doing here. So I'm getting the data from another block, and I'm saying we're going to look up FX rates. What are we looking for? We're looking for the result. What are we trying to populate here is the US dollar value. But then how do we search for it? So we're looking for the result field, and we'll just to be clear, I'll actually open that block. We go into FX rates, and we go to the front end. So we're looking for these values, but the question is, how are we searching for them? We're searching them by trying to match this with this, or this, and then what is the value of this? So in this case, we'll do the US dollar. So we're going to say the euro must equal euro, or the euro must equal the from. US dollar must equal the to. That should be US code, not the value. And we submit that. So now the beauty of this is we're no longer calling the API. We're just getting our values that we've already saved in Blocworx. So that, I guess, saves us API calls, and it gives us more control, I suppose. So I'm going to make a few little improvements to this. Firstly, I'm going to change these back to plain data because we won't manipulate these. And then we're going to do our maths. So I'm going to hide these actually as well, and no harm, just to have it a bit neater looking. Now, let's just go back one more time. We're still only going to see, we're not going to see anything converted yet. Now it's submitting the data because it's the last field. So I'm just going to create another field just to prevent that. I can talk in another video about how to disable that. So now let's just hide this just to keep things neat. The final part is the actual maths conversion of what our result is with the amount. So let's say plain data field. No, it's not a plain data field, it's a math field. Final GBP amount, view field slugs, and it's amount with a star symbol, which is for multiplication, multiply by pound value, and that's the final GBP amount. And then we'll do final US dollar amount. It's going to be another math field, which is amount multiply by US dollar value. I'll just check this one again. Yeah, pound value. So now if I put in 20, hit return, we have our conversion here. 30, hit return. And we can trigger the rules using buttons or whatever we want, but in this case I'm just hitting return. It's the easiest way to do it. Just to do one last tiny bit of tidying up. I kind of like to make everything really clean and tidy, and anything that doesn't really have to be seen for a user, in my opinion, should be hidden, because the more stuff you have on the screen, the more confusing it is for the normal front-end user. I'm going to move these underneath. And I'm going to do one last thing. We're going to round this down. So we're going to do a parameter called make this a numeric field, and we'll make the default decimal places as 2. And the same with this one. So let's just put in 30. We have our final amounts there. And we could just do one last thing just for presentation. We could do a merge field just as like a sentence. So we'll make this a bit smaller because we're not looking at it anyway. We make this a bit bigger. So a merge field is a field where we can build different combinations of field values in the same field, basically. So you'll see what I mean now. Final output. The total amount in US dollar is, and then you do your dollar symbol, and now we can add our field. Final US dollar amount. That's the tags here, BW, and then you close it with a BW, and then you get the field slug. And the total amount in pounds is, and then GBP amount. So now I'll just hide these ones as well. There we are. So now we get a nice output of the conversions and a nice sentence to explain it with our symbols and everything. That's pretty much it. As you can see, the majority of the video was actually me playing with the values that we got from the API, but the API itself was actually pretty quick. So I hope this is insightful. Thanks, and if you need to contact us for any kind of support or anything like that, feel free to do so at info@blockworx.com. Thank you. Bye-bye.